It was a random summer break day at July 11th, 2022. Although if you were a Genshin fan during this day, this was no normal day. From nowhere, MiHoYo released a teaser which nobody really knew about in advance at 5 a.m. in that morning. We were introduced to all the fatui harbingers with the exception of Scaramouche, who took the gnosis for himself, whilst the other harbingers were mourning Signora's death. One of these harbingers who stood out and has been mentioned time over time was none other than Il Capitano, also referred to as the Captain. He has been mentioned as a righteous and strong man. It might be a possibility that he's one of the lower-ranked fatui harbinger, but by the way he's described by others says otherwise.
I've seen him in battle before, and oh, what a sight it was. Perhaps I'm ranked too low for him to notice me right now. Well, he may not recognize my strengths yet, but one day, I'll show him what I'm made of.
The man hides everything under the mask he wears, so no one can know his past or his origins. However, one thing is for sure. He is as hard as iron for having the courage to challenge gods as an ordinary mortal. I don't doubt that he could even take out a ruin guard by stabbing it in its big, glowing eye with one of Klee's crayons. Open parenthesis, don't get any ideas. Close parenthesis.
It's speculated that Il Capitano is the first harbinger, or at least one of the top 3 harbingers due to how he's described. He's quite the unique harbinger. It seems that the lower-ranked harbingers such as Signora and Scaramouche have joined the harbingers because of their past. Although Il Capitano seems to fully commit himself to the full role of a harbinger, he apologized for the outrageous actions that the fatui were infamous for, and was quite friendly to the Knights of Favonius, unlike the diplomats and Signora, as said through Varka's letter that was read by Mika. He's currently in Natlan, and put himself in the never-ending ring of war that nation has been in. Natlan is the most isolated nation we've heard of since Inazuma. We know so little about the nation, and yet the captain is willing to go to the cursed nation and become a belligerent in the war that has struck Natlan. Other than Natlan, this is where we hit a brick about the captain. We don't know much else about him than what's said in this video. But luckily we have a source to go through. The Commedia Dell'arte. The Commedia Dell'arte is where the harbingers' names come from and possibly even their own character. We could go through the Wikipedia of the Commedia Dell'arte and go to Il Capitano of the Commedia dell'arte's Wikipedia, so we could know more about the character that the captain is based from. Of course, the Commedia dell'arte versions of these characters are not going to be 100% accurate to the personality of the character. And in fact, Il Capitano's character in the Commedia dell'arte is quite the opposite to the one we know in Genshin. But we might know more about him through his Commedia dell'arte's counterpart and find about his background. The Commedia dell'arte was aired from the 16th to the 17th century, and Il Capitano was born around this time. He was a Spaniard, and given the fact for most of the late Renaissance up to the 17th century, much of Italy was under Spanish dominance. And Il Capitano was inspired by the boisterous Iberic caudillos who told tales of their exploit either in the conquest of Americas or in the wars with Germany. Which would explain the captain's role in the Commedia dell'arte, since the Commedia dell'arte was an Italian show. We know that Il Capitano was from the former Spanish Empire, but how exactly are we going to pinpoint where in Teyvat the Il Capitano in the Genshinverse comes from? And which nation in Teyvat is closest to Spain? Natlan. Natlan is based off of Latin America, but during the time of the Commedia dell'arte, Latin America was colonized by the Spanish Empire, and even today, nearly the entirety of Latin America speaks Spanish. And even today, Latin America is extremely influenced by Spain and speaks Spanish as well as having adopting much of the Spanish culture. So yes, Il Capitano is from Natlan, the nation even more isolated from the rest of Teyvat than Inazuma. Because unlike Inazuma, there's not a single NPC from there that we know of. So it's pretty safe to assume that regular folks can't leave Natlan for some reason. But Il Capitano has somehow managed to escape Natlan, join the Fatui Harbingers, and is today now going back to his homeland and taking the throne of Natlan to once and for all end the never-ending war. Thank you guys if you've watched my video up to this point. I would appreciate at least leaving a like or subscribing to help me make more theory content.